So there's few coaches out there that their only job is coaching. I mean, for many of us, we are teachers or school administrators. Others are in business, they're lawyers, etc. Most of us are parents. Like, we have other teams. We have other areas in our life where we are leaders. Coaching, which is a passion and a purpose of ours, sometimes that can end up taking priority and we can neglect our role as a leader in these other areas. I know as a former high school teacher and coach, I saw other coaches who chose to neglect their teaching, in some instances not even teach their classes at all, so they could prepare for practices and games. And I saw the effect that it had not just on their players, but their students. And it sends all the wrong messages. In today's episode, the second part of our conversation with Coach Sean Keating, we are going to talk about something I greatly respect him for, and that is the level of his teaching and his approach to the classroom. First off, he knows he is there to first teach and then coach. He sets a strong example to the entire school of getting those priorities right. But secondly, he has also applied transformational coaching to the classroom and built an incredible classroom culture. And that's what we're going to discuss today. How do we apply transformational coaching to other areas of our life, in particular, the classroom? Thank you for listening in to the Coaching Culture Podcast. My name's JP Nurbin with my co-host, Nate Sanderson. And if you missed it, our last episode with Sean Keating, be sure to check it out. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Share it with coaches in your club, your school. Share it with coaching friends. Put it in your newsletter, your emails to parents. Share it on social media. We are just always so grateful when people take the time to promote the message and the mission of this podcast. Now let's get back to our conversation with Sean. Now I want to take the second part of our conversation a little different of a direction here. Just recently, you received the WEMM Outstanding Athletic Coach for the state of Minnesota. You are one of the 6 out of 400 applications. I know a little bit about the process that you went through to receive this award, but it was really kind of cool actually, because your wife emailed me before you even knew you were getting the award, and I guess the whole school put on like some sort of fake pep rally that was all staged to give you the award. So it's just been a really cool experience to see your work, not just on the basketball court, but in the classroom get recognized, because you have taken so much of this stuff is transformational leadership. You've applied that philosophy to the classroom. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
It really starts with when I got into the teaching and coaching profession. I had heard this statement of, don't be the coach that doesn't, take care of their classroom, that where the coaching is the priority. And we all know, if we're in the teaching and coaching profession, that, 95% of our paycheck comes from the classroom. And so I always took a lot of pride. I didn't want people to think that, he's a good coach, but his classes are a joke or takes time off or whatever. And so and just the way I was raised and the family I grew up in, when, my dad's making me do book reports when I'm 6 years old. And, a lot of the things that I went through academically, I take a lot of pride in my, what we do in the classroom. And for me, it goes back to the John Wooden of, like, the most important thing is the example you set. And I think about that all the time. I don't want the non-basketball players in my class to think, well, he favors just the basketball players, or he only connects with the basketball players. And so every kid that comes in my classroom, I really make a point to make them feel welcome, make them feel heard and valued. And so as I've gone through my teaching career, I keep thinking, like, why can't I get some of the things I get out of basketball? Obviously basketball is a choice. It's a privilege. You're choosing to sign up for it. But I've started to just slowly bleed some of those things that we've done in our basketball program into the classroom. And it really got accelerated with COVID. For the first part of the school year, we had hybrid. So we had half the classes each day. And so I might have a class of 12 or 13. And for example, one of the things I'm sure coaches out there have done is that hero, highlight, and hardship little presentation where you ask each kid the hero of their life, the highlight of their life, and the hardship of their life. And I did that with my classes in this new class I started called the Science of Mindset. And what the kids showed and how vulnerable they were and what they talked about, I really wish would have been recorded and filmed. And it was life changing. It was just completely transformational. A kid in our class who may not even know anybody there, who may not be connected, was willing to share like a big struggle of their life, a big highlight of their life. And it made our whole class feel connected. And so now I've had this special experience this year where I've had classes feel connected like my teams. And like I had kids the last day of school, like crying, like because they were sad they weren't going to see some of their classmates. And it's just been a really special opportunity to do some of those things, and to see it work is like, holy cow, like what else could this be? And so it really gives me motivation for the future, and it helps, I think, tie and make our community, our culture of our school. It makes us really feel like when those kids come to a basketball game, or we go support them in the play, or we go support them on the soccer field, that there's even another level of connection because we've done that in the classroom.
I think, Sean, for a lot of us who are teachers or who have been teachers, we think of our classes as, boy, I hope I get a good class this semester, as though it's kind of left up to chance. It's left up to the randomness of the schedule. And I think what you're communicating there is that it's possible with our intentionality to help create an environment where it can become, one of those good classes where you have connection and kids are bought in and they're interested in each other and that sort of thing. And I just wonder if there's, when I think about the conversations that I have with coaches, and I hear this from time to time, I wish I was able to do what I do with my team in the classroom. And a lot of times, the pressures of being a teacher when there's test scores that have to happen, and there's these assessments, and there's all these other things that we have to do. It feels like there's not enough room, and maybe it's not even valued, outside of the classroom, depending on your circumstance. What encouragement would you give to some of those coaches that would love to do some of those team things with their classes, but don't know where to start? Like, what are some first steps?
Yeah, I think the first step is to just be, about that purpose and about your why and about your vision, and what do you really want to accomplish in your career as a teacher? Because for me, it's a little bit easier, just to be honest, because I know what I sacrificed to go into this field. And so I'm just like, if I'm going to do this, it's got to be to make a huge impact. And it has to be to really connect with kids and try to help them. And going through the content standards, albeit super exciting, not really, like chemistry, I know my clientele. I know 80% of them don't have any interest and are never going to use it. And if that's the case, then what can I have a value and impact on? So I think it's first kind of getting over that step of, okay, what do I really want to accomplish? And then it's the small groups of classes, and almost you have to be a little bit of an artist in mixing those groups and figuring out who's going to mix with who. And then Kevin Eastman told me this a long time ago about, the answers you get are determined by the questions you ask. And you have to be a great question asker. And sometimes you got to dig, you got to do some reconnaissance on kids and families, and in a smaller community, it's easier to do that. But it's really being intentional about connecting with every kid in your classroom early on. And for me, that starts with a Google form and a personal inventory. And, I didn't realize your mom is this. And, she actually works with my wife. And, just making those connections is the first step. And then from there, I just find it's being aware and having my antenna up. And when I know a kid's going through a tough day, it's being like compassionate enough, just say like, how are you doing? Do you need to go down to the counselor's? Do you need a minute? And being real. And a student told me this yesterday, like, the thing I love about you the most, Mr. Keating, is just that you're real. Like we're not coming in and I'm just all of a sudden a different person and I'm in robot teacher mode. Like I'm real. And I tell them when I have bad days, like I just upfront with them, like, guys, I'm struggling today. And so I need a little bit more from you guys. Or if I've had, extra caffeine and worked out that morning and I'm rearing to go, then it's going to be a really fun and exciting day too.
I love how you share just the intentionality in those relationships and relationship building and how that's where it starts for you, because I know even that's the same with your team. I know we talked a lot about the team meetings and stuff that you did there, but it's the same with your players. It comes down to those one-on-ones and the questions you ask. One phrase that really sticks with me though that you said is having your antenna up, because I know you've shared some stories about how you'll just be walking down the hallway and a player, or not a player, but one of your students, might be skipping class or something like that, and you just, instead of giving out to them, you pull them in and you start having a conversation, and just trying to connect with that person and see what's going on. And I think that is such a powerful approach.
Yeah. I mean, we're always in a hurry, right? And we're always busy and we always have something to do. And I think I've really taken time, like through journaling this year, to really reflect on like what really matters. And when I'm on my way to the copy room or the mail room or whatever it might be to pick up what I need for the day, I just think about like, does it even matter? That doesn't matter. What matters right now is for me to have this conversation and listen and to give this student my full attention. And in our small groups through coaching and teaching, what I realize from students and players is that, being a great listener is a skill and you have to work on it. And what I've realized with so many kids is they don't have someone to listen and they don't have somebody to be patient enough and care enough to let them articulate it. And a kid told me the other day, when I voice my feelings, it hits different. And for some people, that may be writing their feelings in a journal. But sometimes these thoughts in our head, we can't sort them out until we voice them out. And once we do that with someone who's actually intentionally listening, it changes. And so it's a skill that I'm not by any means great at, especially if you ask my wife, but I'm working on it.
You're a great example of the power of intentionality in those one-on-ones. Not only do they not have people listening, but they don't have people teaching them how to listen. And I think that's the power of not just doing intentional. I always tell coaches, like, the number one way to start building your culture is to be consistent about one-on-ones with players. I think, but you also do a great job of breaking them into small groups where they're listening to each other and they're practicing those listening skills. They're practicing that empathy. And that's why I think at the end of the day, you have these super connected classrooms where the students are connected. They're going to miss each other, not just Coach Keating. They're going to miss each other because you've been able to connect them as like a culture within that school. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you've shared, and I think anybody could share is that intentionality.
Yeah. One thing I'd add is that to coaches out there is we underestimate our ability to impact people's lives in some respects from maybe outside of our team. For an example, it might be a manager. It might be, for me, some of these conversations with students, they may not ever have anyone else in my, they might look up to, Mr. Keating, and having me listen is different for them than having their parent or the counselor or whatever. And so sometimes we always struggle with not giving ourselves enough credit and thinking we're not doing enough and we're not good enough and all those things. But I would encourage you to think about what can you do and making sure that you're being more aware and more present, because it's so hard because we get so distracted. I think we miss a lot of opportunities.
Well, I think, Sean, one of the things that you described here, and you touched on this a little bit before, is the impact that it can have on a young person's life when they're seen. When they're seen for who they are and they have the opportunity to express that to a person, as you described, that doesn't necessarily have an agenda for them. When you think about their parent role, and this isn't this isn't critical of the parent role, because you and I are both parents, and you know, you understand you have areas you'd like to see your kids grow in and skills you'd like to see them to develop. But parents have an agenda when it comes to their education, right? Coaches sometimes have an agenda when it comes to the role of their playing time or what have you. So I think you're right on there that it's just rare if a student or if a player doesn't have a peer. You know, we think about our best friends in life. Usually it's the one that we can just let our hair down, or when we had hair, Sean, that, you know, we can be ourselves without having to worry about, is it good enough? You know, is it good enough for this person? And it doesn't require a special talent to be able to do that in the life of somebody else. And I think that's what you're really illustrating here. And I want to ask you just kind of one follow-up to that too, just coming back to that family note. You know, in my own experience, as I've learned more about the brain and I've learned more about, you know, just some of the things relationally that we've talked about here, it's definitely impacted my parenting, you know, and how I try to interact with. We have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and I know you've got some young kids at home as well. And I just wonder if you'd, you know, could talk a little bit about how that's impacted, you know, life on the home front for you as well.
Yeah, Nate, your what you shared in Park City was really, really important for me at the time, because it took a lot of stuff that I might think I know, but it gave me the research behind it, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of understand the why a little bit more. And from that, just in reading more books and things, it's given me a perspective as a parent, just to not let so many little things and trying to make your kids have to be perfect. Because that is just such a reality. I survey my students all the time, and they feel so much pressure from their parents, from society, from their peers. I don't want my kids to feel that they have to be something. I want them to be like themselves. We want them to reach their full individualized, personalized potential. We don't want it to be this cookie cutter thing that we or society puts on them. And so I really it helps me be more patient. It helps me embrace their authenticity of each child that we have. We have 3 kids, and I think that's really helped me in that things. That doesn't mean I don't struggle. That doesn't mean I suck some days and I'm a terrible, you know, listener and parent and on my phone or, you know, checking out Bill's, you know, news. But it does I think I give them more grace is the biggest thing I've learned. And I know that's something that everybody needs.
One thing I just want to circle back on too, Sean, is in your teaching and how you've brought some of the transformational philosophy to the classroom, not just to the basketball court, as you launched a unique class this year around life skills and mental health that you mentioned a little bit earlier. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you know, taking that step. You know, not everybody has that freedom to be able to design their own class, but I'm sure there are other teachers out there that do. You know, I think there's definitely some other teachers and coaches that would have the support of their administration. So I'm hoping you could just share a little bit about that and just the impact that you've seen that have on students.
It's called the Science of Mindset and Nutrition. I was sitting in a staff meeting last spring, and the course catalog was coming around, and you either approve it or you get to propose a new class. And I just said, screw it. I'm going to just write up this course description right now. And it's kind of one of those things that like you do, and then you see like a couple weeks later, the school board approves it. You're like, oh, wow. Like this is becoming a thing. And, you know, it's just my passion. It goes back to all the mental warrior stuff. And it's trying to get kids to understand themselves better and be reflective and to listen to their peers' stories. And so the class is based on the foundation of a growth mindset. And so we start with that, and then we take it from there and go through all kinds of skills and strategies from psychology and books I've read, and shared that Hero Highlight and Hardship project. But what's unique is that every day the kids get into groups of usually 3 or 4, and they talk for 45 minutes every day. And it's not always with the same people, it's with different. And then some days we do what's called, I just call it speed dating. And so we go around and I'm literally sitting with like a clipboard and just questions I think about that are relative to what's going on in the school, in their life, in the world. And so it's different every day. For seniors, a lot of it was, the pandemic and dealing with anxiety and, we're talking about social media and we're just talking about things that are relevant to them. And, we just wrapped up the class this week. And so it's really good timing. And it's just to hear their perspective of how cool it is to learn about others. And people, even though that they knew for 15 years, they didn't know like the things they learned, they didn't know. And so to me, what's really cool about that is when you learn something about somebody that way, how you treat them is different. And that to me is how you build a community, a team, a school of people that are genuinely like empathetic towards each other.
I love that. I love just, I know some people might be thinking, well, I can't do that. But, in my last year teaching high school, we had 70-minute classes in English in the English classroom. And we spent the first 5 minutes, I'd give them all a question. They had to partner up and we'd go for a walk around the school or a walk around the running track. And then just trying to create opportunities for people to connect, as well as delivering really good content that I think, you're maybe not always an expert on, you don't have a degree on, but you're really big on personal development, which is, one thing that I know that I really have enjoyed our friendship and our relationship is that we've been able to talk not just about culture building, but we're able to grow or able to talk about, just whether it be nutrition or, you're on the TOC Bible study every Wednesday morning. So there's the spiritual development and just, relationships with our family. So just what are some things though that you feel are really, really important to your own personal growth as a coach? Because coaching, obviously you're having an impact on others, but you're also growing, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, through this process as well.
Yeah, I really take the philosophy that, lifelong learner and you're always trying to ask questions and learn more. And as you grow up and have a family and things change, it changes your priorities. And I think in the past we get caught up, and I know you guys have talked about like we get kind of coach envy and like, oh, look at what this program's doing. Look what this program's doing and this coach. And I was lucky. I figured out about 6 years ago, like that just, I just tune it out. Because I used to have this thought in the back of my head that, I wasn't good enough and that I needed to go validate it. Maybe it's a bigger school, maybe it's a bigger opportunity, more whatever. Like, I think we all have that professionally. But for me, what really stood out is that like, and again, it goes back to something Don Meyer like talked about is like, he once said at a clinic, like being a coach in a small town is just the greatest. If you ever got them to state, it's going to be like the most incredible thing. And be where you're at and the job you have, no one else can do it like you can. You know things about your program and about your community. You're the expert. And so much of what we learn from, and I love being on Twitter and I love seeing all these things, but a lot of it doesn't apply to us. And I think what makes a great leader and a great coach and a great person is sifting through all of this, because we all can acquire knowledge, right? And if you're great at it, go on Jeopardy. But if you really want to, just boil it down, it's what really matters for me. And for me, it's like, if it's going to help me grow spiritually, if it's going to help me grow as a father or husband, and if it's going to help me become a more empathetic and just a better leader, then I'm going to do it. Because at the end of the day, what I really think matters to our players and our students is the example we set. And I know I fail every day, but if I can keep working to become a better person, that makes me a better father. That makes me a better husband. That makes me a better coach.
I think, Sean, one of the things I've learned over the years too, and I love that phrase of coaching envy. We look at what someone else is doing and we think, oh, we should be running that, or I should immediately implement that into my program and to our culture. What I've kind of dwelled on more is not necessarily what other coaches are doing, but how did they get there? When I read about the Patriots, not to start anything here with my Bills fan friend Sean, but I'm just fascinated by why they do what they do, probably more than what they do. And when you read books about people that are doing things differently or they're innovating in certain ways, I'm just curious, how did they think about whatever their problem was that they solved and get there? And then I think about, it helps me to maybe have different perspective in my own context, as you just described there. So it's a pattern of thinking maybe that's as powerful and more powerful to me than what necessarily other coaches or leaders are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And you hear those moments about like, this happened, so then this is how we countered. And those are the stories I love too. And for me, it all goes back to about my third year being a head coach. I just realized what we just did for the last week, we didn't do any of it in the game. We didn't do any of it. So what really matters? And that kind of just solidified for me, for our program. We're not coaching a bunch of Division I, Division II, college scholarship type players. We're coaching homegrown rural Minnesota kids. And for us, what really matters is if we can be really connected, we can be really heard, we can feel valued, we can become leaders, and then we work really hard, we can be pretty dang good and tough to beat. But if we're not, we got no chance. And so that's where we put all our money in, and then we go from there.
Sean, this has been a great conversation today. I know many of our listeners really enjoyed you, and it's not just because you have a great podcast voice. You've got so many great suggestions and ideas, but there is a way they can continue to listen to you. They don't have to just end it here. You have your own podcast. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that and just where they could check it out and what you kind of talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. So we do a podcast with a colleague, social studies teacher, Dan Clark. And really it's called The Eternal Student. And we found that we have a lot of high school kids and college kids, but really a lot of parents and really anybody that listen to it. And we try to just promote mental health and promote solutions for the problems that a lot of young people are going through. And we reflect on it as a parent, as a teacher, and for ourselves. And so if you just on any Apple Podcasts or whatever, just go to Eternal Student, you'll find us. And then you can find me on Twitter at Coach Keating.
All right, that's it for today's episode. We're super grateful for Sean coming on to share his experiences. After hearing Sean's story, if you would like to explore the possibility of attending our retreat in August or joining the TOC Community and Mentorship Program, there is a link in the details of this episode to schedule a call with Nate or myself. We'd love to hear from you and answer any questions you may have on any of these opportunities.